Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Hannah Wong, a third-year PhD student working in industrial ecology, and I'm a member of BIOMES committee, and I will be introducing our speaker shortly. BIOMES stands for Bridging Issues and Optimizing Methods in Environmental Studies. It is YSE's flagship seminar series featuring community-sourced interdisciplinary presentations on research, policy, and activism surrounding pressing environmental issues. Our goal is to inspire and inform conversations within the YSE community. So you all are welcome to suggest speakers and topics through biomes.yse@yale.edu. Our speaker today, Alex Munoz, is the new McCluskey Fellow in Conservation at YSE. For the past 8 years, he was director of Latin America for National Geographic's Pristine Seas program, which is dedicated to exploring, studying, and protecting the world's last wild places in the ocean. In collaboration with national governments and local communities, Alex led the largest marine reserves in Latin America, covering 1.3 million square kilometers of ocean, which are now completely protected from fishing and mining activities. Alex also led important legal changes in Chile, such as the prohibition of bottom trawling on all seamounts in Chilean waters, the establishment of the first science-based fishing quota system, the ban on shark finning, and the first transparency obligations on the use of antibiotics by the salmon industry. Alex was named the Yale World Fellow in 2019. He has a law degree from the University of Chile and a master's degree in international and comparative law from George Washington University. Now let's welcome our speaker today, Alex.
Okay. Thank you, Hannah, and thanks to BIOMES for the kind invitation. I couldn't be happier for being here. Very recently, I was honored to be named a McCluskey Fellow in Conservation by the Yale School of Environment. Also, as Hannah said, 4 years ago, I was here at Yale as a Yale World Fellow, which makes it a double honor that Yale has given me. And the basis for those appointments had been my work in marine conservation. What I do is try to protect the ocean. And I've done that for almost 2 decades. Today, we're going to go through some of that work and how we have approached marine conservation. Also, I want to let you know that one of the main reasons I'm here is that I'm putting together the first course in ocean conservation and sustainability in the history of Yale. So hopefully you will be here next semester to join that course, and we will not only learn new things, but actually create some of the content that hopefully will be useful for new protectors of the ocean. So let me show you this photograph that we took in Mexico, in a group of islands in the Pacific, very remote place called the Revillagigedo Islands. It's a very hard name to pronounce, Revillagigedo Islands, but it's one of the best places I visited with National Geographic. It's full of life, and most importantly, it's a very healthy ocean. Today is fortunately protected. And what I say is healthy and pristine is because here you can see all the pieces of a healthy food chain. You have the big sharks, the big even tuna in some cases, smaller fish, even smaller fish, algae, all the complete food chain that makes this ecosystem very functional, as if it was a really great watch that gives the exact time. That's what we call a pristine seas. And the reason why we go to these places is that because they are like a time machine. The world doesn't have many of these places left because we have fished out most of the fisheries. We have depleted these ecosystems, and also we have been polluting them. So these are like our window to the past, like the ocean to the past. Let me take you to another place. Let's go diving for a little bit. This is Cape Horn, on the southernmost points in the continent. Cabo de Hornos, Cape Horn is a very emblematic place for navigators, for sailors, because of the rough waters that cross that Drake Passage. And we were diving there, and we found this incredible kelp forest. I love kelp forests because they are an amazing habitat for hundreds of species. And we explore that, we film, we study what we find. That's our scientists there. We do these surveys to see all these sea creatures that can be found there, so we can have an idea of the state of that ecosystem, if there's something missing, if there's any part of the food chain missing, or if it's in good shape. I remember very vividly that moment, because when I was diving there, I saw like the sea floor was a little bit blurry, and I thought it was my mask. And when I got even deeper, I saw that the seafloor was moving. And I remember we saw this amazing aggregation of life. Like there's no 1 square centimeter without life. Like there are thousands and thousands of crabs that we found. It was an accident. It was a complete accident. But that gives you a sense of how a healthy ecosystem looks like. Everybody's eating something, basically. Unfortunately, a few kilometers from this place, we can see this. This is bottom trawling. This is one of the most destructive human inventions ever. This is a way of fishing where a big vessel drags these heavy nets through the ocean to catch shrimps or some other fish that are down there in the seafloor. But in that process, you destroy everything, basically. So here you have a picture of a healthy ecosystem and how it looks after it's been trawled. It's really damaging, and it usually destroys ecosystems that have took thousands of years to develop. This is a coral that was found in one of those nets around Cape Horn. It must be around 1,000 years old, and was completely destroyed in 1 second, like that. And to make things worse, scientists, and this was published last week, scientists have found that while they remove the sand on the bottom, they liberate a lot of CO2. So when they do the bottom trawling, they don't only destroy the sea life, but they also making climate change worse. And the amounts of CO2 that is being liberated in that process is really huge. If you count all the CO2 removed by the bottom trawling industry in the world, it accounts for more than the whole aviation around the world. It's incredibly serious. Also, there are other destructive fishing practices like long lines. When you throw these big lines with hundreds or sometimes thousands of hooks, there are a lot of creatures that are just entangled or hooked, like the sea turtles. There are thousands of sea turtles that are dying every year because of these long lines that are used for big fish like tuna, swordfish. Sometimes they target sharks too. Big nets that are usually used for small fish like sardines or anchovies. Sometimes they have these kind of situations where dolphins are trapped because they are so massive. The dolphins are naturally eating in those places. They're eating these little fish, but they're trapped and they die in these nets. The amount that we're taking from the ocean is also incredible. More than half of the fisheries in the world are overfished or even collapsed. That means that they are in a very heavy stage of overfishing. Probably they will not recover. That means collapse. This is anchoveta in Peru. They fish between 2 and 4 million tons every year. So what makes things even worse? Our biggest enemy, climate change. because of climate change, the oceans are becoming not only warmer, but more acidic. And the combination of both is lethal to some of the ocean creatures that are not adapting fast enough to these changes. One of them are corals. Scientists are predicting that by 2050, there may be no coral reefs around the world because of ocean warming and acidification. So what can we do about it? And one of the big solutions that we can implement are marine protected areas. These are geographically defined areas in the ocean where fishing or other extractive activities are either completely banned or heavily restricted. This is a small marine reserve, but really great one in Costa Rica, Isla del Caño. And we found this very healthy ecosystem. It's an amazing place. And that's what we are looking for. Either protect that or bring the ocean back to that situation. But what are the main benefits that we found that come from marine reserves? One of them, of course, biodiversity is protected. All these fish, all these algae, all these corals are protected. But also they help mitigate climate change. If you protect those kelp forests that we saw at the beginning, you will be protecting an amazing tool that absorbs CO2 in quantities that are even higher than rainforest in the Amazon. It's an amazing ally to climate change. That's why we need to protect those places. And also, we've studied the resilience of the ocean, and places that are entirely protected, they become more resilient to climate change, so they can adapt better. Those corals that we saw in an unprotected place, they would probably die in any big warming event. But if the place is protected, they have a better chance, and we've seen that, they have a better chance to recover. And finally, this is very important, they help increase productivity, more fish, better jobs, and food. And this is key because we have to make a good case for ocean protection. And the economic case is very, very solid. This is what happens when you protect the ocean. When you have a marine reserve, the fish become more abundant and bigger, and they are different from trees. I mean, if you have a land park, yeah, you protect what's inside. But when you have a marine park, the fish go outside the park, and they can be fished outside the park in a more abundant way. This is key to making the case for decision makers, especially because sometimes they're not sensitive to biodiversity, but maybe they can understand that there's no contradiction between protecting nature and protecting the economy. That's a dilemma that we are usually facing between nature and the economy. In the ocean, it's not true. The more you protect, the more fish you will have, and you can actually have sustainable fishing around the reserves. I used a word in the title of this presentation, synaptic. And what I meant by that is that it really matters the way we approach to marine conservation. I've been asked, I mean, what's your approach? It's a top-down approach. Let's say you target a president or a minister and then get these reserves protected, or you work with local communities and then hope that decision makers understand and are persuaded by the communities. Actually, it's more complicated than that. My approach is like this synapse. Like this is the analogy that I come with to show how we work with different actors so they can connect and communicate so we can have the best outcome from a conservation point of view, but it's also respectful of the rights of these individuals or communities or even indigenous peoples. This is very important because sometimes conservation has been understood just as an activity towards protecting the nature, but we need to understand that there are people usually living from those places, either local communities, indigenous peoples, etc. So the way we approach this is to connect with all of them. So we start building this case of the need for marine protection that is also respectful of those groups. Let me show you an example. In Chile, we have two groups of islands called the Juan Fernandez Archipelago and the Desventuradas Islands. They are located here. Juan Fernandez, probably around 400 miles off the coast of Chile, and then Desventuradas, very similar, but north of that. Juan Fernandez has this amazing community of fishers that live from lobster. They have been doing that for more than 100 years, and they also go and fish to Desventuradas. They have been incredibly good in having sustainable fishing. They very early, they came up with rules like respecting the size of the minimum catch size of the lobster, or the season, or when they have a female with eggs, they throw it back into the ocean. And very early, we started thinking about how we can support that fishing activity, but creating a huge marine reserve around these two islands. And it took a few years to build that relationship. It's important to build a relationship over trust. And it took a lot of talks, a lot of experiences. And I don't want to go into details, but it took a long time to get to the place where they were convinced that it was a good idea to protect these places. They were not familiar with these concepts like marine reserves or environmental protection. So it's very important to respect that time they take to understand and come up with these ideas. You can be very sure, but it's like a psychiatrist. You cannot give the answer. You have to respect the time they take to think about these ideas and be completely independent when they take the decision. So once they decided that it was a good idea to protect these places, which hasn't been done in Chile before, we decided to come up with our whole support. We launched two expeditions, one in this boat, the Argo, and another one in this other boat, the Plan B. Those are very good vessels for exploration, and we brought our team. I like this one a lot because it's equipped with a very cool submersible, and that we use. It goes 1,200 feet down, and this is also a very good vessel for divers. So we can perform all kinds of things. One of the main activities that we have during our expeditions are filming, shooting these incredible images that are so inspiring. We do a lot of science, and I will show you how, but the images are so inspiring, and it triggers a lot of emotions. And I think that when you see what works, what is it that is triggering decisions, usually emotions are the ones that are moving the world. So we have these amazing camera people that are like ballet dancers, like in the water. They're amazing divers, very experienced divers, and incredible artists. So we shoot our documentaries with them. And also we have our scientists. They do these surveys, like I showed you before. They count everything. One team is counting the fish, another team is counting everything that is on the seafloor. We also use technology, and this is something that it could be very appealing to some of you. These are built in National Geographic labs. These are the drop cams that are very hard, and they can go 11,000 meters deep. They were tried in the Marianas Trench, and they went all the way down. And most importantly, they came up. So we recovered the video. So we use that all the time. There's no way we could have explored such a great depth without these inventions. And they have become very, very practical. Now they're smaller, and we use them all the time. And also, we use other cameras that go on the surface that are called pelagic cams. Remember I told you about the long lines, these big lines that are used for tuna fishing, shark fishing, swordfish? Well, these scientists invented the pelagic cams that are, they pretend to be a long line, but they have cameras instead of hooks. So they drift, and then we recover them a few hours later. And this is something that we use here in Juan Fernandez because there were no sharks. There was a part of the food chain missing. And we thought, where are the sharks? Where are the sharks? And our divers were not seeing any. But what if we remove the person and we just leave the cameras so the sharks feel safer, maybe to approach? So we use these pelagic cams and see whether we found any sharks. And we saw this. So that's a bait. Has some fish there. That's a blue shark. That's a mackerel shark. Huge. And that's also amazing because it's very cheap. It's very cheap. And what's the trick here? They use 2 GoPro cameras and they're put in a certain angle so scientists can know what's the size of the fish that passes in front of the camera. So that's not only for filming, it's also a scientific methodology to estimate the abundance and kinds of animals and the size of the animals that they see. They're incredibly helpful, and anybody can build them if they have the instructions. And the submarine. You may wonder what's going on there. We're just going down with this on the submarine. It can fit 3 people, a pilot and 2 people up front. It's like a bubble. It's 10 centimeters thick. It's acrylic, and it looks like that. It's really cool. I must say, it's really cool. It's also a tool to do science and also film, but also we have brought presidents, ministers, decision makers. If you want to impress them, if you want them to see with their own eyes what they're actually protecting, this is incredible. And now it's in Palau doing their last journeys, because we're going to have another one that it can go 3,000 feet down. Also, you may be asking yourself, who took that picture? This is a TV trick. We want to show in the documentary how the submarine goes down, but we had to pretend that we were very deep. Actually, we shot this at night, and the divers could go to that depth, probably, I don't know, 100 feet. And that's why it's so dark. It's not that there's a diver that went that way down. But just to give you a sense of what it feels to be down there. This is I borrowed this from Mexico. This is not a Juan Fernandez, but I just wanted to show you how it feels. You lose complete sight of the bubble when you're down there. It has a 360 degrees view. You can see down, up.
Oh my God, look at
That's
this
a giant
thing.
manta that was playing with us all the time.
Unbelievable.
It was an incredible experience. And the manta kept coming back and back. And then we realized that it was playing with our bubbles. It was like a jacuzzi for the manta. It was incredible. One of my favorite sub dives. And this kind of technology is very useful now. Today, satellite is available at a much cheaper price, and we use this to estimate what we call the fishing effort, the amount of fish that is going on in a certain place, because you want to know what are the uses, what are the interests that are at stake. So here you can see almost every vessel in the world that is fishing in a certain moment, and there are platforms like Global Fishing Watch that you can use for free and see what's going on. But some of them cheat. They turn their satellite devices off. And that's why artificial intelligence is now used to spot the cheaters, the ones that do that on a regular basis. Now artificial intelligence is used to alert you if there's a boat like that doing that, and that is approaching to your waters. So we continue building our case. The community is more informed now with all the science that we brought, and we start building the proposal for this marine reserve. And then next step was bringing the government. That's former Minister Heraldo Munoz. He's a foreign minister, and that's very interesting. Sometimes the leader, the champion in the government is not necessarily the one that has the like formal authority. It was not the Minister of the Environment, for instance. It was him, the foreign minister, that saw, okay, this is a great idea. We should go for this, and we should make it part of our international agenda. And we invited him to Juan Fernandez to meet the fishermen. This is an example of the synapse I was telling you about. You have two completely different actors that before then, they have never met before. This was the first time that a foreign minister came to these islands, and we got them together, and they invited him to fish and to measure the lobster to show him how sustainable the fishery was. And then we screened the documentary. We did it many times, and it was aired on the National Geographic channel. But first, we show it to the community. And these events with the locals are usually a great time to talk and discuss, and also encourage them not to be afraid. They were very nervous about what they were doing, and this sense of community and unity gave them the strength to move forward with the proposal, which was completely unprecedented. And then all the different unions, fishermen union, tourism unions, signed a petition to the government. And what we did was having the local community present their proposal everywhere. It was not me, it was not National Geographic, it was them leading their proposal, leading their effort everywhere. And we took them to different international fora. In this case, they came to New York, to the UN. They were so nervous, and they rehearsed so much, and they made an amazing presentation. Many ambassadors were present there that ended up supporting their petition. Also, the same minister, Heraldo Munoz, when he was addressing the General Assembly, he talked about this proposal, and he named them. They were very moved by this. They have never imagined that they would have experienced anything like this. And then our Ocean Conference. This is a conference that was created by John Kerry from Yale. John Kerry, as a Secretary of State, created this conference, our Ocean, as a platform for countries to announce reserves. And you can see the same photograph. I mean, you can see the same image of him so proudly measuring the lobster with this fisherman. So it got a lot of attention. And then finally, President Michelle Bachelet, we met with her, and we presented all this case, and she said, okay, we were gonna do that. So what she did was incredible. She created two huge reserves. First one in Desventuradas of 303,000 square kilometers, completely protected, no fishing, no mining. And in Juan Fernandez, 262,000 kilometers, no take as well. So these are the two largest marine reserves in Latin America. We didn't end there. We then gave her a big recognition, and we gave her what we call the planetary medal at National Geographic in front of 2,000 people in Washington. And she got praised by her legacy. That's how Chile became one of the main leaders in marine conservation around the world. And of course, we got our magazine featuring Chile and this amazing decision in the cover of this magazine. So that's an example of how we do it. We've done that in all Latin America, and there are like a dozen marine reserves that we have worked on with using this approach, and we have covered 1.3 million square kilometers completely protected today. That's a success example, but I wanted to show you, I don't know how much time we have, but I wanted to show you a campaign that is still incomplete. This is Patagonia in Chile. It's an amazingly beautiful and rich place. These fjords are completely unique, full of life, as you can see, breathtaking views and landscapes. And this place is today is Chile, but it was inhabited by the Cahuéscar people. The Cahuéscar people have been living there for 6,000 years. And we met this woman, Leticia. Leticia is a Cahuéscar woman, and she was telling us about her culture, but also about the problems in this place. Salmon farming. Salmon farming is a way to produce salmon in fish pens, basically open fish pens. It has all kinds of problems. I put this picture because there you can compare a wild salmon here, the color, and this color over here. This is completely artificial. This is sold everywhere, by the way. You've seen that. But in Chile, the practices for producing this are terrible. This is just fat. You can see and the difference between a fish that is swimming all the time and this one that is confined in a fish pen all of its life. And the same beautiful ecosystem that you saw now is invaded by these fish pens. They are huge and they host hundreds of thousands of fish. And they're throwing food, usually made of fish meal and fish oil, together with tons of antibiotics. And the seafloor that should be covered with algae or cold water corals now is completely, this is like a desert. It's really ugly also. Of course, it contradicts all the nature tourism that is going on in the same place. I want to show you something that is very shocking, but it's just to give you an example of the impacts that this industry has. Inside this fish pen, this whale, a sei whale that is a threatened species, was found entangled and it started bleeding. As it tried to release itself, it got worse and it was really badly hurt. Finally, this whale died inside the fish pen because it's a natural habitat of whales, but got inside, maybe running away from an orca, and it died. Also, there are other interactions with sea lions that are the most beautiful creatures that you can see. But sea lions eat fish, so they approach to the fish pens and they try to make a hole to take a salmon. And that's why salmon farmers hate them. So they do things like this. Sometimes this video is too heavy. No. But anyway, sea lion was shot, and they are constantly killing them with axes or sticks or whatever. So it's terrible, and that's going on in Chile. It's a very large industry, and it's killing the ocean. This is also how they behave. They leave all this debris, this garbage, every time. They're very, very dirty. So Chilean salmon is based on this kind of practices. Again, with the Kaweskar, we decided to launch an expedition. But it was very important to be sensitive to the cultural aspects of this place. So we ran this campaign together with the Kaweskar all the time. And Leticia and Juan were on board of the vessel. They also did another expedition by themselves without us. And in this case, she was pointing to the places that are important for their culture, their fishing grounds, their sacred places, all of that. And that was our guide to combine our traditional science, Western science, with their own traditional knowledge. So for the first time, we made this report that was half science and half biocultural. Biocultural means like the interconnection between a specific culture and its natural environment. The place is incredible. This is how the seafloor looks. You can see all the amount of life that is found there. So this is being destroyed by 67 salmon farms in this area. The orcas can be seen everywhere. Dolphins, sea lions, and glaciers. It's incredible to have in one place the influence of glaciers, Pacific Ocean, fjords, very cold waters, the forest on the islands, all in one place. It's impossible to replicate that. And also, as I was saying, we work with the Kaweskar so they could come up with the biocultural report. And here they are identifying their fishing grounds and their practices that have been there for thousands of years. Also, we try to rescue their memory. We wanted to show that they are living people and not just a people that has been vanished. Many people have asked us, are they still around? Yes, they are still around. But all the photographs were black and white. So we worked with a photographer to get new photographs, color photographs of these people doing what they do. And it was an incredibly rich experience. So we could make the case that these people are still around and they have the ancestral rights and they need to be respected. Then we screened the documentary to very large audiences and in the channel as well. So I want to end with a video that is the trailer, it's the teaser of the documentary. And then I'll end with a final comment.
Cada ave y cada animal tiene un cuento en el mundo Kaweskar. Se dice que traen espíritus de los antiguos, de los ancestros.
Estamos navegando por territorio indígena de los pueblos Kaweskar y Yagán.
This is probably one of the least explored and least understood marine ecosystems on Earth.
Estos pueblos originarios que han estado acá por más de 6.000 años hoy están completamente amenazados.
Me da mucha rabia. No me da tristeza, me da rabia.
Hay actividades industriales como la salmonicultura que están realmente poniendo en riesgo el entorno.
De esa manera a nosotros no nos convenía. Además que nosotros no teníamos ni idea de lo que estaban haciendo.
Wow, there's a big chunk of ice coming off.
Southern Patagonia ice field is melting faster than any other major ice field.
Tratando de proteger lo último que nos queda, tenemos la obligación de conservar lo que existe. Quizás nosotros no vamos a recuperar lo que había antes, pero sí conservar lo que hasta hoy tenemos, y lo que hoy tenemos todavía es muy valioso. Si nos vamos a perder nuestra memoria, porque nosotros no podemos permitir que la memoria que existe en el territorio se destruya.
Okay, so this story hasn't ended yet. We haven't been able to protect this place yet. And that's why we need more people dedicated to ocean conservation. And that's the main reason why I'm so excited to be putting together this course for the next semester. We need more scientists, more lawyers, more economists, more filmmakers and musicians, or anybody that can see this as an inspiration, because there's room for everyone. You can approach this from many points of view, and nobody should feel excluded. What we need is to make a better case for ocean conservation. Sometimes biodiversity helps, but it's not enough. Sometimes the economy helps a lot, and it's not enough. So we need to study and elaborate better arguments so we can be stronger in protecting these places. When we're protecting these places, we're making a big service to us and to the rest of the world. And there's probably there's no other time in history when we need more of this, more effort devoted to protecting these places, protecting nature, and fighting climate change. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm available to any questions you may have.
Thank you for a fascinating presentation. I wonder whether underlying what you're saying is the fact that marine conservation perhaps gets less attention than terrestrial conservation. If that is the case, would love to hear more about your reflections on why and how that can be addressed.
Yes, that's a very good observation. Yes, it has always been like that. Just to start with Yale, there's no ocean conservation course at Yale. There are scientists doing fisheries or aquaculture and yes, and maybe environmental courses, but there's no course devoted to ocean conservation and sustainability. It was the case when environmentalism started. I mean, the land parks were way first than before like marine parks. And maybe it's because we tend to care more about what we see, and the ocean is so vast, and we thought that it was invincible, that it was impossible to hurt the ocean. And it was really in the 90s when we started realizing, okay, there's no, I mean, the fish are gone, the fisheries are becoming more difficult, and it requires more effort to go and fish. Some species have left, they are gone. And now we see that the numbers are terrible. Like 90% of the sharks in the world are gone, 90%. And that's because of shark finning that comes from Asia, especially China. There are species, like marine species, being extinct, getting extinct every year. And now with these images, we have gone a long way to make people aware of this. And then there were the first marine conservation organizations being born, like Oceana. I worked for Oceana for 8 years before National Geographic. That was the first marine conservation organization in the world, and it was created in 2002, so very late. And now it has become very interesting because we are combining these different ways to persuade, like not only biology, but also economy, filmmaking, social science and cultural studies. All those are now in place, and we're finally seeing the ocean in the major environmental discussions. If you go to the COP28, now they speak about the role of the oceans in mitigating climate change. That's new. It only happened a couple of years ago, but we're getting there.
Hello, thanks for your presentation. I would like to know what are your thoughts about the regulatory status of the high seas regarding fishing. You show us a map about all the fishing vessels, and I don't know how it is in Chile, but I know in Argentina we have all the problem with outside the economic zone with all the vessels, and especially foreign vessels. So I don't know, what are your thoughts about the regulation of that?
Yes, well, the high seas have been very tricky. Usually we have relied on national jurisdictions to regulate fishing and create reserves. But the high seas were not abandoned, but it was very hard to regulate. The first attempts were what they call the RFMOs, like the Regional Fisheries Management Organizations. They were an attempt to create some kind of governance for the ocean. And last year, after many years of negotiation, the first high seas treaty was approved. I don't know if you've heard about the BBNJ, which is Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdictions. This is a treaty that was just approved, and now it's waiting for the first 60 ratifications to enter into force. And that BBNJ treaty includes provisions to not only to regulate fish, but also to create marine reserves for the first time in the high seas. It's going to be a very long process. It will not happen immediately, but it was a very important step, I would say. It was very important. One of the problems that we have in the high seas and in any place that is remote are fishing subsidies. That's another treaty that is very important. The WTO, the World Trade Organization, has been negotiating this fishing subsidies agreement for 20 years without reaching an agreement. Why is important? Because these long distance fleets, they need to burn a lot of fuel to get to those places. Why they can afford that? Because they receive subsidies. That's why we always say that they're not fishing for fish, they're fishing for subsidies. They just want the money. The problem with that is that because there are between 20 and 30 billion in fishing subsidies around the world, there are certain fisheries that shouldn't be profitable, shouldn't be there, but they exist because of the fishing subsidies. And the high seas are the main target of that. If you remove the subsidies, probably the fishing in the high seas will be half of what it is now. In the back and then.
You mentioned Michelle Bachelet, and I'm curious what changes you saw with Piñera and then with Boric now.
I mean, like in national politics in general, or
no, with like marine protected areas, how they both kind of receive and consider.
My short answer: first of all, none of them had oceans as part of their program, so it required us suggesting all these things. Piñera was the first one to create a large marine reserve in Chile, Sala de Gómez. That was great. 450,000 square kilometers. That's near Israel. And President Bachelet tripled that, which was incredible. So both of them have left an incredible legacy. President Boric said that he would become the first green president. He hasn't created one single fully protected marine reserve yet. But to be fair, the world has become very difficult. Politics have become extremely difficult. Governments have become very quickly unpopular. So for him, I think he has been giving up a lot of his promises because people are just talking about the economy and security like a crime. It has been very hard for him. And yeah. maybe he will do something. Sometimes we wait until the last year. The legacy card is always very useful. I mean, they try to leave something. And we always approach and say, okay, you should leave this. You will be remembered if you create this marine reserve. Yeah.
The question about the effective or the
Yes. Yeah, it is super important. Marine reserves have to be designated and then implemented. And one of the keys to implementation is enforcement. Countries have different capacities. In Chile, I would say they are very good. In some other countries, they don't spend $1 in enforcement. The good news is that enforcement can be done like with a presence, like boats, but now they have added planes and then satellites. So now we can see, we can narrow the surface to be monitored with satellites. Instead of watching everywhere, you can say, okay, all the fishing vessels, illegal fishing vessels are coming this way and they're targeting this place. So there you can focus. So you can be a lot more efficient and then effective by using all this technology that allows you to know where things are happening.
Thanks so much for your talk. There's the part of like marine conservation that's so important for global biodiversity and climate change, but there's also the part of like how the oceans can help us combat climate change, and how important it is to protect them and their current chemistry to avoid many sort of tipping points. And I'm wondering, aside from conservation, are there any direct interventions that you're very excited about? I think like in Australia, we have these new kelp farms that they're working to like create sustainable agriculture, but also help with acidification. So are there any sort of direct solutions that you're very excited or skeptical about?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, oceans are already helping us a lot. Kelp are absorbing a lot of CO2, whales, the same. I mean, the more life you have in the ocean, the more they absorb. Also, they are absorbing around 1/3 of the heat in the atmosphere, which is great, which is a lot. But we're reaching to a point that we are saturating the ocean. One of the initiatives that I'm looking forward to see how effective they are is the planting of kelp. I don't know if it's the right word, planting of kelp. But yes, we're recovering kelp by like establishing programs like huge plantations of kelp. That should be scaled up. That should be replicated everywhere. I haven't seen like a major kelp plantation, but there are a lot of pilots going on. I think that's important. And also, if you protect certain species like whales, for instance, you have another extra tool to combat climate change. I don't have more time, but there's a great example that we saw with the impacts of, the resilience of a marine reserve. There's a place called the Southern Line Islands, and that place has the healthiest coral reefs in the world, incredible. But then in 2016, there was a warming event and killed most of the corals. But since that place was protected, we explored that 2 years ago, and it came back, it recovered. So that showed us that well-protected, effectively protected marine protected area make those oceans more resilient. In other places, probably those corals would have died and never come back. So the more research we have, we'll be adapting better to climate change. And the more biomass you have, then you will have better absorption of CO2. I think there's no way to completely address the climate change problem unless we also protect nature. I mean, those things are completely interconnected. Yes, let's reduce the emissions, but also let's help ourselves by protecting these places that are helping us with the absorption of CO2.
All right, due to time, let's wrap it up here. Thanks, Alex, for a great talk, and thanks everyone for
Thank you.
Thanks.